I never thought I'd end up in handcuffs in my own driveway. But there I was, face pressed against the hood of a police cruiser, my keys scattered on the concrete, while my neighbors watched from behind their curtains. The call came from a woman I'd never met, claiming I was breaking into a house. My house. The house I'd lived in for 3 years. The house where my daughter's drawings covered the refrigerator and my wife's rose garden bloomed every spring. But here's what nobody expected. When the body cam footage was finally released, it didn't just show what happened to me. It revealed something far more sinister about the neighborhood I thought I knew. If this story grips you the way it gripped me, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we dive deep into real stories that matter. Stories that challenge everything you think you know about justice, prejudice, and redemption. My name is David Morrison. I'm a software engineer, a husband, and a father to an 8-year-old girl named Maya. In 2019, my wife Angela and I bought our dream home in Maple Grove, a quiet suburban neighborhood about 40 minutes outside the city. Tree-lined streets, good schools, low crime rate, the kind of place where kids still rode bikes until the streetlights came on and neighbors borrowed cups of sugar from each other. We were the first black family on Sycamore Lane. That shouldn't matter, but I'm telling you this because it becomes relevant later. At first, everything seemed fine. Our immediate neighbors, the Hendersons, brought over a casserole the day we moved in. The Changs across the street helped me unload our moving truck. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly widow next door, gave Maya homemade cookies and told us stories about how the neighborhood used to be an apple orchard 50 years ago. For 3 years, we lived what I thought was a normal suburban life. I mowed my lawn every Saturday. Angela hosted a book club once a month. Maya played with the neighbor kids. We went to block parties and holiday gatherings. I coached Little League. We were part of the community, or so I believed. But there were small things. Things I told myself I was imagining. Like how conversations would sometimes stop when I walked up, or how the HOA suddenly decided to enforce rules about basketball hoops and driveways right after I installed one for Maya, or how Patricia Summers, who lived 3 houses down, would cross to the other side of the street when she saw me jogging in the morning. Angela noticed it more than I did. She's always been more perceptive about these things. "They don't trust us," she'd say. "Did you see how Karen looked at me at the grocery store? Like I was going to steal something." "You're overthinking it," I'd respond. Not because I believed it, but because I wanted to believe it. Because admitting the truth meant admitting that even here, in this beautiful house we'd worked so hard for, we still weren't safe. We still weren't seen as equal. The incident happened on a Thursday afternoon in October. I remember because it was trash day, and I just rolled our bins back from the curb. Angela had taken Maya to soccer practice. I'd left work early because I had a headache and wanted to lie down before dinner. I pulled into our driveway at 3:47 p.m. I know the exact time because it's stamped on the body cam footage that would later turn our lives upside down. I parked, got out of my car, and walked toward my front door, keys in hand. I was wearing my work clothes, khaki pants, a button-down shirt, dress shoes, nothing threatening, nothing unusual, just a man coming home to his own house. That's when I heard the voice. "Excuse me. Hey, what are you doing?" I turned around. A white woman I'd never seen before was standing at the end of my driveway. She was maybe 45, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing yoga pants and a designer jacket. Her face was twisted into an expression of suspicion and anger. "I'm sorry," I said, confused. "I asked what you're doing," she repeated, pulling out her phone. "This is a private neighborhood." I looked down at my keys, then back at her. "I live here. This is my house." "Sure it is," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. She started recording me on her phone. "I'm calling the police. We've had break-ins in this neighborhood, and I'm not going to let some thug ransack another home." Thug. That word hit me like a physical blow. I'm a 37-year-old software engineer with a master's degree from MIT. I volunteer at my daughter's school. I've never been arrested, I've never even gotten a speeding ticket. But to this woman, standing in my own driveway, with my keys in my hand, I was a thug. "Ma'am, I really do live here," I said, trying to keep my voice calm even though my heart was racing. "My name is David Morrison. This is 1247 Sycamore Lane. I've lived here for 3 years." "I've never seen you before," she insisted. "And I walk this street every day." That was clearly a lie. I'd been mowing my lawn every Saturday for 3 years. I'd waved to countless joggers and dog walkers, but I didn't argue. Angela had taught me that arguing with someone who's already decided you're guilty only makes things worse. "Look, why don't I just go inside, and you can see that I have keys and—" "Don't you dare go into that house," she shouted. "Stay right there. The police are on their way." I heard the sirens before I saw the cars. 2 police cruisers came screaming down Sycamore Lane, lights flashing. Neighbors started coming out of their houses. I saw Mrs. Patterson on her porch, her hand over her mouth. The Henderson kids were watching from their living room window. 2 officers jumped out of the first car, hands on their weapons. "Put your hands up. Now!" I dropped my keys and raised my hands immediately. I knew the drill. Every black man in America knows the drill. Don't move suddenly. Keep your hands visible. Stay calm. Comply with every order. Do everything right, and maybe, just maybe, you'll survive the encounter. "I live here," I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. "This is my house. My ID is in my wallet in my back pocket. Get on the ground. Face down, now!" I got on the ground, my face pressed against the concrete of my own driveway. The driveway I just pressure washed 2 weeks ago. The driveway where Maya had drawn a hopscotch court in chalk. I felt hands roughly patting me down, then pulling my arms behind my back. The cold metal of handcuffs bit into my wrists. "What's your name?" one officer demanded. "David Morrison. I live at this address, 1247 Sycamore Lane. Please just check my ID. My wallet is in my back pocket." I heard one officer pull out my wallet. There was a pause. "License says David Morrison, 1247 Sycamore Lane." "Probably a fake," the woman who'd called them said. She was still standing there, phone out, recording everything. "I've never seen him before." "Ma'am, do you live on this street?" one of the officers asked her. "No, but I walk here all the time. I know everyone in this neighborhood." Another voice cut through the chaos. "Officers! Officers, wait!" It was Mrs. Patterson, hurrying down her driveway as fast as her 80-year-old legs could carry her. "That's David. He lives here. He's my neighbor. For goodness sake, let him up." The Henderson family came out too. "That's David Morrison," Mr. Henderson called out. "He's lived here for 3 years. What's going on?" I felt the pressure on my back ease slightly. The officers helped me sit up, though they didn't remove the handcuffs yet. One of them, a younger officer with red hair and freckles, looked embarrassed. The other, older with a gray mustache, looked annoyed. "Can anyone confirm that this man lives at this address?" the older officer asked. "Yes." Mrs. Patterson was almost crying. "I just told you, he's my neighbor. He and his wife Angela and their daughter Maya. They've lived here since 2019. Now take those handcuffs off him." The younger officer pulled out a key and unlocked the cuffs. "Sorry for the confusion, sir." Confusion. He called it confusion. Like this was some innocent misunderstanding and not a terrifying example of what happens when someone decides you don't belong based purely on the color of your skin. I stood up slowly, rubbing my wrists. My hands were shaking. I looked at the woman who'd called the police. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't backing down. She was still holding her phone, still recording, her face set in stubborn certainty. "You should be more careful about who you call the police on," Mr. Henderson said to her, his voice cold. "You could have gotten an innocent man killed." "I was just trying to protect the neighborhood," she said defensively. How was I supposed to know he actually lived here? Maybe by minding your own business, Mrs. Patterson snapped, or by asking before you called armed police officers. Do you have any idea what you've done? The woman finally lowered her phone. For just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Not quite guilt, but maybe the first dawning realization that she'd made a terrible mistake. Then her expression hardened again. Better safe than sorry, she muttered and walked away. The officers took my statement. They apologized again. They said they were just responding to a call and following procedure. The older officer gave me his card and said if I wanted to file a complaint against the woman, I could. Then they left. My neighbors lingered for a while, expressing their outrage, their apologies, their disbelief. But eventually they went back to their houses too. And I was left standing in my driveway, alone, staring at the chalk hopscotch court where my daughter played, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. It was Angela. Hey, honey, practice is running late. We'll be home around 6. Love you. I didn't know how to tell her. How do you tell your wife that you were handcuffed in your own driveway? How do you explain to your 8-year-old daughter that the police came because a stranger decided her daddy looked like a criminal? I went inside and sat on the couch for a long time. I didn't turn on any lights as the sun set. I just sat there in the growing darkness, thinking about that moment when I was face down on the concrete, hands cuffed behind my back, surrounded by armed officers. I thought about how easily that could have gone differently. One wrong move, one officer having a bad day, one moment of panic, and I could have been shot in my own driveway. When Angela and Maya got home, I told them. Angela's face went through a series of emotions: shock, anger, fear, despair. She held me tight and didn't let go for a long time. Maya didn't fully understand what had happened, but she knew something bad had occurred. She asked if the police were the good guys or the bad guys, and I didn't know how to answer. That night, after Maya was asleep, Angela and I talked about what to do next. Should we file a complaint? Should we move? Should we just try to forget it and move on? We can't let this go, Angela said. That woman needs to face consequences. She could have gotten you killed. But what's the point? I asked. She'll just say she was trying to protect the neighborhood. She'll say she made an honest mistake. Nothing will happen to her. Maybe, but we have to try. For Maya, for every black family who moves into a neighborhood and has to wonder if they're going to be accepted or if someone's going to call the cops on them for existing. She was right. I knew she was right. So the next day I went to the police station and filed a formal complaint. I asked if there was body cam footage of the incident. They said there was, but it would take time to process my request. I also posted about the incident on our neighborhood Facebook group, not naming the woman, but describing what had happened and expressing my disappointment that someone would call the police without even attempting to verify whether I was actually doing anything wrong. The responses were mixed. Some neighbors were supportive and apologetic. Others said I was making a big deal out of nothing. A few said the woman had every right to call the police if she felt unsafe, and that I should understand she was just being cautious. Being cautious. As if my existence was inherently threatening. As if walking to my own front door with keys in my hand was suspicious behavior. But here's where the story takes a turn. About a week after the incident, I got a call from the police department. It was a detective named Sarah Chen. She asked if I could come to the station to discuss my complaint. When I arrived, Detective Chen led me to a small conference room. She had a laptop open in front of her. Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed the body cam footage from the officers who responded to the call about you. There's something I need to show you. She turned the laptop toward me and pressed play. I watched the footage from the beginning. The officers arriving, me raising my hands, getting forced to the ground, the handcuffs. It was painful to watch, but nothing I hadn't already lived through. Then Detective Chen fast-forwarded to after the officers had left and most of the neighbors had gone back inside. The body cam was still recording as the officers walked back to their cars. And there, caught on the edge of the frame, was the woman who'd called them. She was standing by a black SUV parked down the street talking to someone. Detective Chen paused the video and zoomed in. The person the woman was talking to was Patricia Summers, the woman from 3 houses down who always crossed the street when she saw me jogging. Detective Chen played the audio. It was faint, but with the volume turned up, I could hear snippets of their conversation. "Did exactly what you said," the blonde woman was saying. "Good. Need to make them uncomfortable. Eventually they'll leave." That was Patricia's voice. "What if someone finds out we planned this?" "Nobody will care. It's our neighborhood. We have a right to protect our property values." Detective Chen stopped the video. She looked at me carefully. "Mr. Morrison, this conversation suggests that the call made about you may not have been a spontaneous reaction. It appears to have been coordinated, potentially as part of a deliberate effort to harass you and your family." I felt cold. "You're saying this was planned?" Patricia Summers, who lives on my street, who I've waved to dozens of times, planned to have the police called on me? That's what this footage suggests. And if that's the case, Mr. Morrison, this isn't just a case of mistaken identity or overreaction. This is potentially criminal harassment, possibly even a conspiracy to violate your civil rights. Detective Chen pulled up another file on her computer. I started looking into Patricia Summers after seeing this footage. Turns out this isn't the first time something like this has happened in Maple Grove. 3 years ago, another black family moved into the neighborhood. Within 6 months, they'd had the police called on them 4 times for various alleged violations. Noise complaints, suspicious behavior, alleged property damage. None of the complaints were substantiated. The family eventually moved. "Let me guess," I said bitterly. "Patricia Summers was involved. She filed 3 of the 4 complaints personally." Detective Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Morrison, I think there may be a pattern of racially motivated harassment in your neighborhood, and I think Patricia Summers has been orchestrating it. The body cam footage of her conversation with the woman who called the police on you is evidence of that. But I need your help. I need you to tell me about every interaction you've had with Patricia Summers, every strange occurrence, every moment where something felt off." So I told her. I told her about Patricia crossing the street, about the HOA suddenly enforcing rules right after we moved in, about conversations that would stop when I approached, about the book club that Angela was mysteriously uninvited from after Patricia joined. Detective Chen took notes on everything. When I finished, she sat back and sighed. "Mr. Morrison, I want to investigate this further. With your permission, I'd like to interview your neighbors. I'd like to look into Patricia Summers' background and activities in the neighborhood. And I'd like to see if we can build a case for harassment and civil rights violations." "Will anything actually happen?" I asked. "Or is this just going to be another investigation that goes nowhere, while my family continues to live next to someone who's actively trying to drive us out?" "I can't make promises about the outcome," Detective Chen said honestly, "but I can promise that I'll take this seriously. What happened to you was wrong, and if it's part of a larger pattern of behavior, then Patricia Summers needs to be held accountable." I agreed to cooperate with the investigation. Over the next several weeks, Detective Chen interviewed neighbors, reviewed HOA records, and dug into Patricia Summers' online activity. What she found was disturbing. Patricia Summers was a member of several online groups that discussed protecting neighborhood character and maintaining property values. On the surface, these groups seemed innocuous, focused on things like architectural standards and lawn maintenance. But dig a little deeper, and the real agenda became clear. These were dog whistles for keeping neighborhoods white. The group shared strategies for making minority families uncomfortable enough to leave, excessive HOA enforcement, coordinated calls to police, social exclusion. Patricia had been active in these groups for years. She'd posted about our family specifically, referring to us as the new arrivals, and asking for advice on encouraging them to find a more suitable neighborhood. Other members had shared tactics, noise complaints, suspicious person reports, anonymous tips to code enforcement about alleged violations. Detective Chen also discovered that Patricia owned the black SUV that the blonde woman had been standing next to. Further investigation revealed that the blonde woman, whose name was Jennifer Moore, was Patricia's sister-in-law. She didn't actually walk through our neighborhood regularly like she'd claimed. She lived 20 minutes away. Patricia had specifically asked her to come that day to call the police on me. This was premeditated, Detective Chen told me during one of our meetings. Patricia knew your typical work schedule. She knew when you usually came home. She had her sister-in-law positioned and ready to make a call the moment you arrived. This wasn't a mistake or an overreaction. This was a deliberate attempt to subject you to a traumatic, potentially dangerous encounter with law enforcement. Can you arrest her? I asked. We're building toward that. We need to make sure we have enough evidence to charge her with something that will stick. Harassment, conspiracy, making false reports to police. But Mr. Morrison, I need you to be prepared. This is going to get worse before it gets better. When Patricia finds out she's being investigated, she's likely to escalate. Detective Chen was right. About a week after her investigation became known in the neighborhood, things started happening. Someone spray-painted a racial slur on our garage door in the middle of the night. Our mailbox was knocked over. Angela's car tires were slashed while it was parked in our driveway. Someone called CPS with a false report that we were neglecting Maya, resulting in a terrifying visit from a social worker that thankfully went nowhere once the social worker saw that Maya was healthy, happy, and well cared for. We installed security cameras. The police increased patrols on our street, but the harassment continued. Anonymous letters showed up in our mailbox, telling us we weren't welcome. Someone left garbage on our front lawn. The Henderson family found a dead rat on their porch the day after Mr. Henderson gave a statement to Detective Chen supporting us. The neighborhood was fracturing. Some families stood by us, outraged at what was happening. Others stayed silent, either out of fear or tacit agreement with Patricia's goals. A few actively defended Patricia, saying she was just a concerned neighbor who'd been unfairly targeted. Angela wanted to move. I can't do this anymore, she said one night after we discovered someone had thrown eggs at our house. Every day I wake up wondering what we're going to find, what they're going to do next. Maya's having nightmares. She asked me yesterday why people hate us. How do I answer that? I didn't have an answer for Angela. How do you explain to your 8-year-old daughter that some people hate her because of the color of her skin? How do you tell her that the nice house we bought, the neighborhood we thought would be safe, has become a battleground? But I also didn't want to leave. Moving felt like letting them win. It felt like admitting that Patricia Summers was right, that we didn't belong here, that people like us should just accept being driven out of communities we had every right to be part of. We've done nothing wrong, I told Angela. We bought this house legally. We pay our mortgage. We pay our taxes. We follow every rule. And we're still being terrorized. If we leave now, it sends a message that this behavior works. That all you have to do to keep a neighborhood white is harass black families until they give up and go away. Angela was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I know you're right. I know fighting this is important. But David, I'm tired. I'm so tired of being strong. I'm tired of explaining racism to our daughter. I'm tired of wondering if the next escalation will be violence. I'm tired of looking at our neighbors and wondering which ones hate us and which ones just don't care enough to help. I held her while she cried. And I understood, because I was tired too. Tired of the constant vigilance. Tired of the fear. Tired of the emotional labor of existing in a space where your mere presence is treated as a threat. The next day, Detective Chen called. We're ready to move forward with charges against Patricia Summers and Jennifer Moore. Patricia is being charged with conspiracy to file a false police report, criminal harassment, and civil rights violations. Jennifer is being charged with filing a false police report and conspiracy. We're also investigating potential hate crime enhancements. What about the vandalism, the threats? We're still working on that. The security footage you provided has been helpful, but so far we haven't been able to definitively identify who's responsible for the recent incidents. We're examining the footage frame by frame, cross-referencing with vehicle registrations in the neighborhood, but Patricia and Jennifer are both lawyered up now, and they're not talking. That afternoon, I came home to find a news van parked on our street. A reporter approached me as I got out of my car. "Mr. Morrison, we've heard that you're pressing charges against a neighbor for calling the police on you. Can you comment on that?" I should have said no comment. I should have gone inside and shut the door. But I was tired of staying quiet. I was tired of protecting the comfort of people who wanted me gone. "My name is David Morrison," I said, looking directly at the camera. "I'm a software engineer. I've lived in this house with my wife and daughter for 3 years. In October, a woman I'd never met called the police on me while I was standing in my own driveway, coming home from work. I was handcuffed and detained, face down on the concrete in front of my neighbors. The body cam footage later revealed that this wasn't a mistake or a case of overzealous concern for neighborhood safety. It was a planned action, coordinated by my neighbor Patricia Summers, as part of a deliberate campaign to harass my family and force us to move. Since then, we've been subjected to vandalism, threats, and intimidation. Our daughter's 8 years old and she's having nightmares. She asked her mother why people hate us. That's what we're dealing with. That's what happens when racism hides behind phrases like protecting the neighborhood and maintaining property values. The story went viral. Within 24 hours, it was on national news. The video of me talking to that reporter was shared millions of times. The body cam footage of Patricia and Jennifer's conversation was obtained by news outlets and played on loop. Our neighborhood became a symbol of something bigger, the ongoing struggle of Black families to exist in spaces that white people have decided should be exclusive. Public opinion was divided, as it always is with these stories. Some people expressed outrage on our behalf. Others said I was playing the race card, that Patricia had every right to be concerned about strangers in her neighborhood, that I was making something out of nothing. But something shifted. The national attention meant the police department couldn't quietly sweep this under the rug. The district attorney's office couldn't offer Patricia and Jennifer a slap on the wrist. There was too much scrutiny, too many people watching. Patricia Summers was arrested 3 days after the story broke. The sight of her being led out of her house in handcuffs, the same house she'd lived in for 20 years, 3 doors down from mine, was surreal. Her lawyer released a statement claiming she was the victim of a witch hunt, that she'd done nothing wrong, that her concern for neighborhood safety was being criminalized. Jennifer Moore turned herself in the next day. Her lawyer tried to paint her as someone who'd made an honest mistake, who genuinely believed I was breaking into a house. But the body cam footage contradicted that narrative. The conversation between her and Patricia made it clear this was coordinated. The arrest didn't stop the harassment, though. If anything, it got worse. Supporters of Patricia started showing up at our house. Some were local, others came from surrounding towns, drawn by the media coverage and the narrative that Patricia was being persecuted for trying to protect her community. They held signs saying, "Support Patricia Summers," and "Neighborhood Watch isn't a crime." Counter-protesters showed up too. People who supported us, who saw what was happening as part of the larger struggle for racial justice. Our quiet suburban street became a circus. Police had to set up barriers. News crews camped out. Every day brought new people, new signs, new confrontations. Maya couldn't go outside to play anymore. We kept the curtains drawn. Angela stopped going to the grocery store because too many people recognized her from the news coverage. Some were supportive, others were hostile. Both groups wanted to talk to her, to get her reaction, to make her trauma into content for their social media feeds. I tried to maintain some normalcy. I went to work. Though my colleagues looked at me differently now, some were openly supportive, others were uncomfortable, like they didn't know what to say. A few made comments about how I should just move, how staying was causing unnecessary drama, how I was making things harder on myself and my family. As if we were the problem, as if we were the ones who created this situation by having the audacity to buy a house in a nice neighborhood while black. The preliminary hearing for Patricia and Jennifer was scheduled for early December. Detective Chen prepared me for what to expect. Their lawyers are going to try to paint you as oversensitive, she warned. They're going to argue that Patricia had legitimate concerns about neighborhood safety. They're going to say the body cam footage was taken out of context. They're going to make you out to be the aggressor for pressing charges. She was right. When the hearing began, Patricia's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Richard Kellerman, argued that his client had done nothing more than encourage a concerned citizen to report suspicious behavior. My client saw a man she didn't recognize attempting to enter a home, Kellerman said. In a neighborhood that has experienced break-ins, her concern was not only reasonable, but responsible. The fact that there was a misidentification doesn't make her actions criminal. Your Honor, the prosecutor countered, the body cam footage clearly shows the defendant discussing having made them uncomfortable with the goal of making the Morrison family leave the neighborhood. This wasn't about safety. This was about racial exclusion. The judge reviewed the footage. She asked questions. She looked skeptical of the defense's arguments. But I'd learned not to get my hopes up. The system has disappointed me before. In the end, the judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence for the case to proceed to trial. Patricia and Jennifer were released on bail. Patricia's supporters cheered outside the courthouse. Our supporters chanted, "No justice, no peace." I just wanted to go home. Except home didn't feel like home anymore. That night, Angela and I had a long conversation with Maya. She was old enough to know something serious was happening, even if she didn't understand all the details. We tried to explain it in age-appropriate terms, that some people had been unkind to our family, that we were working with the police and the courts to make sure they faced consequences for their unkindness, that sometimes doing the right thing is hard and scary, but it's still important to do it. "Are we going to move?" Maya asked. Angela and I looked at each other. We'd been asking ourselves the same question for weeks. "Do you want to move?" I asked Maya. She thought about it for a moment. "I like my room, and I like my school, but I don't like that people are mean to us. And I don't like that you and Mommy are sad all the time now." Out of the mouths of babes, my 8-year-old daughter had perfectly articulated the impossible choice we were facing. Stay and continue fighting, but subject our family to ongoing trauma, or leave and lose the home we'd worked so hard for while sending the message that racism works, that harassment achieves its goals. "We're going to figure it out, sweetheart," Angela said, hugging Maya close. "But no matter what we decide, we're going to be okay. We're going to stay together, and we're going to be okay." After Maya went to bed, Angela turned to me. "I think we need to move." "Angela, I know what you're going to say, that it means they win, that it sends the wrong message, that we have every right to stay, and you're right about all of that. But David, we're not symbols. We're not martyrs. We're a family. And this is destroying us. Maya is having nightmares. I can't sleep. You're drinking more than you used to. We've stopped laughing. When's the last time we had a normal day? When's the last time we weren't looking over our shoulders or bracing for the next attack?" She was crying now. "I'm not saying we drop the charges. I'm not saying we let Patricia and Jennifer get away with what they did. But we can pursue justice without living in a war zone. We can find another house, a better house, a neighborhood where we're actually welcome, and we can start healing." I wanted to argue, I wanted to insist that we stay, that we fight, that we don't give them the satisfaction. But looking at my wife, seeing the exhaustion and pain in her eyes, I realized she was right. We'd already paid too high a price. Our daughter's sense of safety, our peace of mind, our ability to simply exist without fear. "Okay," I said quietly, "we'll move." The relief on Angela's face was immediate. and heartbreaking, because that relief came from the decision to leave our home, to abandon the place we'd invested our money and dreams in, to let the bigots win. We put the house on the market in January. The trial was scheduled for March, so we'd stay long enough to see that through. But we started looking for a new place immediately. This time, we were more careful. We researched neighborhoods extensively. We talked to other Black families about their experiences. We looked for places with diverse populations, with strong anti-discrimination ordinances, with track records of actually enforcing those ordinances. The listing for our house drew immediate attention, but for the wrong reasons. People showed up wanting to see the house from the news. Some were genuine buyers. Others were gawkers or people who wanted to express their opinions about the situation. Our real estate agent finally started pre-screening potential buyers and requiring proof of financing before scheduling showings. Meanwhile, the pressure on Patricia and Jennifer was mounting. The district attorney had added additional charges based on evidence Detective Chen had uncovered. Patricia was now also facing charges related to the previous Black family who'd been driven out, as well as potential charges related to the vandalism and harassment my family had experienced. Though those connections were harder to prove definitively, her lawyer was pushing hard for a plea deal. So was Jennifer's. The prosecutors were willing to negotiate, but they wanted guilty pleas on the core charges: conspiracy to file a false police report and civil rights violations. Patricia refused. She maintained her innocence, insisting she'd done nothing wrong. Her supporters rallied around her, raising money for her legal defense, painting her as a victim of political correctness gone mad. But Jennifer was wavering. According to Detective Chen, Jennifer's lawyer had approached the prosecutors about a possible deal. If Jennifer agreed to testify against Patricia, to fully explain the coordination and planning that went into the false police call, the prosecutors would recommend a lenient sentence. If Jennifer flips, Detective Chen told me, this case becomes much stronger. Her testimony, combined with the body cam footage and the evidence of Patricia's online activity, would make it very difficult for Patricia to claim innocence. What kind of sentence are we looking at? I asked. For Patricia, if convicted on all charges, possibly 2 to 5 years. For Jennifer, with a plea deal and cooperation, probably probation and community service. It didn't seem like enough. 2 to 5 years for deliberately trying to get me killed? Because that's what calling the police on a Black man is. It's attempted murder by cop. Patricia knew the statistics. She knew how these encounters can end, and she did it anyway. But the system is what it is, and something is better than nothing. In February, Jennifer took the deal. She pled guilty to filing a false police report and agreed to testify against Patricia. Her allocution, where she had to describe what she'd done and why, was painful to watch. She admitted that Patricia had called her and asked her to drive to our neighborhood. Patricia had told her when I typically came home from work. Patricia had instructed her to wait and watch. And when I arrived, to call 911 and report a break-in in progress. Patricia had specifically told her to describe me as acting suspiciously, to use words like threatening and aggressive, even though I was just walking to my own front door. Jennifer claimed she didn't fully understand what she was participating in. She said she thought Patricia had legitimate concerns about neighborhood safety, but she admitted that Patricia had mentioned wanting to make our family uncomfortable enough to leave, had said things about property values and the character of the neighborhood. I should have questioned it more, Jennifer said, her voice shaking. I should have realized what was really happening. I should have refused to participate. I'm sorry for the pain I caused the Morrison family. I'm sorry for my role in a racist act. I was wrong. Her apology rang hollow. She was sorry she got caught, sorry she was facing consequences. If the body cam hadn't captured that conversation, if Detective Chen hadn't pursued the investigation, Jennifer would have gone on with her life, never thinking twice about the terror she'd put me through. But her testimony was damning for Patricia. And with Jennifer's cooperation, the prosecutor's case became ironclad. Patricia's trial began in late March. It lasted 2 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the courtroom watching as the prosecution methodically built their case. They showed the body cam footage of the initial incident. They showed the footage of Patricia and Jennifer's conversation afterward. They presented evidence of Patricia's online activity, her posts in those neighborhood protection groups. They brought in testimony from the previous black family who'd been driven out, who described the harassment they'd experienced and Patricia's role in it. Detective Chen testified about her investigation. The Hendersons testified about what they'd witnessed. Mrs. Patterson testified, describing how Patricia had tried to recruit her into efforts to make us unwelcome, and how she'd refused because the Morrisons are lovely people, and this is supposed to be a Christian neighborhood, which means we're supposed to love our neighbors, not torment them. Jennifer testified, walking through the planning and coordination in excruciating detail. Under cross-examination, Patricia's lawyer tried to shake her testimony, suggesting she was lying to get a better deal. But Jennifer held firm, and the body cam footage backed up everything she said. I testified about the incident itself, about the fear I felt when I was face down on my own driveway in handcuffs, about the ongoing harassment my family had experienced, about the impact on my daughter, my wife, our sense of safety and belonging. Patricia's lawyer tried to paint me as someone who was oversensitive, who was looking for racism where there was only legitimate concern. He asked why I'd made such a big deal out of a simple misunderstanding. He suggested that I was pursuing charges to get attention or to profit from the situation. "Mr. Morrison," he said during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you've received donations from people who support your cause? That you've been offered book deals and movie rights?" "We've received some donations to help with legal fees and security costs," I said. "We haven't accepted any book or movie deals. We're not interested in profiting from our trauma. But you've certainly gained a platform from this situation, haven't you? You're now a public figure. You're being invited to speak at events, to appear on news programs. This case has raised your profile considerably. I'd give up every bit of that profile to have my daughter's sense of safety back," I said. "I'd give it up to be able to stand in my own driveway without fear. I didn't ask for this platform. I didn't ask to become a symbol. I just wanted to come home from work without being treated like a criminal." The defense's case was weak. They tried to argue that Patricia's concern for neighborhood safety was legitimate, that she had no way of knowing I actually lived there. But the prosecution's evidence of premeditation and coordination destroyed that argument. They tried to argue that Patricia's online posts were taken out of context, that phrases like maintaining neighborhood character didn't have racial implications. But expert witnesses on housing discrimination testified otherwise. Patricia herself took the stand. Her lawyer probably advised against it, but Patricia insisted. She was convinced she could persuade the jury that she'd done nothing wrong. She couldn't. Her testimony was defensive and unconvincing. She claimed she barely knew Jennifer, contradicting phone records that showed dozens of calls between them. She claimed she'd never tried to drive us out, contradicting her own social media posts. She claimed she wasn't racist, that she had black friends, that she'd voted for Obama. The classic defenses that mean nothing. Under cross-examination, the prosecutor asked Patricia directly, "Did you coordinate with your sister-in-law, Jennifer Moore, to have her call the police on David Morrison?" Patricia hesitated. She knew the body cam footage existed. She knew what it showed, but admitting the truth meant admitting guilt. "I may have mentioned to Jennifer that I had concerns about someone in the neighborhood," she finally said, "but I didn't specifically tell her to call the police." "You didn't tell her to watch for when Mr. Morrison came home from work? You didn't tell her to call 911 and report a break-in? You didn't discuss making the Morrison family uncomfortable enough to leave the neighborhood?" "That's not... I mean, we may have discussed, but not like that." Patricia was falling apart on the stand. The jury watched. I watched. And I saw the moment when she realized she was going to be convicted. when the careful facade she'd maintained crumbled and what was underneath became visible to everyone in that courtroom. Fear. She was afraid. Afraid of the changing demographics of her neighborhood. Afraid of what it meant for her property values. Afraid of losing the comfortable, homogeneous environment she'd known for decades. And in her fear, she decided to act, to drive out the people who scared her, to protect her little corner of the world from change. But her fear didn't justify what she'd done, and the jury recognized that. After 2 weeks of testimony, the case went to the jury. They deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, they found Patricia Summers guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to file a false police report, criminal harassment, and civil rights violations. She was sentenced 2 weeks later. The judge gave her 3 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 months. She was also ordered to pay restitution to our family for the cost we'd incurred. Legal fees, security systems, therapy for Maya, the loss we took on selling our house below market value because of the stigma attached to it. Jennifer, who'd taken the plea deal, was sentenced to 3 years probation and 500 hours of community service. She was also required to participate in anti-racism education programs. The sentences felt both like justice and like insufficient justice. Patricia would serve some time. She'd face consequences. But 3 years didn't undo the trauma. 3 years didn't give my daughter her sense of safety back. 3 years didn't erase the fear I now carry with me every time I interact with police, every time I walk in a predominantly white neighborhood, every time I wonder if someone is looking at me and seeing a threat instead of a human being. But it was something. It was a message that this behavior has consequences, that you can't just call the police on Black people for existing and expect to get away with it. That racism, even when it hides behind dog whistles and plausible deniability, can still be identified and punished. We'd already moved by the time the sentencing happened. We found a house in a diverse neighborhood about an hour away. Our new neighbors are Black, white, Asian, Latinx, mixed-race families, same-sex couples. The community is genuinely integrated, genuinely welcoming. Maya has friends of all different backgrounds. We attend block parties where the food table looks like a UN summit, and nobody thinks twice about it. It feels like we can breathe again, like we can just exist without constantly waiting for the next attack. It's what home should have felt like all along. But we lost something too. We lost the naive belief that if you work hard and play by the rules and try to be a good neighbor, you'll be accepted. We lost the illusion that racism is just ignorance or isolated incidents rather than a systemic force that shapes where we can live and how we're treated. We lost the innocence of thinking our daughter could grow up without experiencing hatred directed at her because of her skin color. Detective Chen stayed in touch with us after the trial. She told me that our case had prompted a broader investigation into discriminatory practices in suburban communities. That other families had come forward with similar stories of harassment and exclusion. That the patterns she'd uncovered in our neighborhood existed in dozens of communities across the region. "What you and your family went through was terrible," she told me during one of our last conversations. "But your willingness to stand up, to press charges, to see this through even when it was hard has made a difference. Other families are getting justice because you fought for yours." I appreciate that. I do. But I also wish we'd never had to fight in the first place. I wish we could have just lived in our house, raised our daughter, been part of a community. I wish my big legal battle was about a property line dispute or a noisy neighbor, not about someone trying to weaponize the police against me because of my race. The body cam footage that started this whole thing, that revealed Patricia and Jennifer's conspiracy, is now used in police training. Departments across the country show it as an example of how fake 911 calls can be used as weapons, how officers need to be skeptical of suspicious person reports, how they need to de-escalate rather than immediately confronting people with force and weapons. Some departments have implemented new policies as a result, requiring 911 callers to stay on scene when reporting suspicious persons, prohibiting anonymous reports, training officers to verify whether someone actually belongs somewhere before treating them like criminals. Small steps, but important ones. I've been asked to speak at various events about our experience: civil rights organizations, police reform groups, community meetings in other neighborhoods where Black families are facing similar harassment. I do it when I can, though it's exhausting to constantly revisit the trauma. But if our story can help someone else, if it can prevent another family from going through what we went through, then it's worth it. Angela has become an advocate too, focusing specifically on the impact of housing discrimination on families and children. She talks about the psychological toll, about how Maya still asks questions about why those people were mean to us, about how we're all still in therapy processing what happened. Maya's doing better. Kids are resilient in ways adults aren't. She's made new friends in our new neighborhood. She still loves soccer. She still draws pictures and leaves them on our refrigerator. But she's also more aware now, more cautious. She notices when people stare at us. She notices when we're the only Black family somewhere. She notices things an 8-year-old shouldn't have to notice. I think about Patricia Summers sometimes, about whether she understands what she did, about whether she regrets it or if she still thinks she was justified, about whether prison will change her perspective or just make her more bitter. I think about the neighbors who stayed silent while we were being harassed, the ones who watched from their windows but never spoke up, never offered support, never challenged Patricia's behavior until it was convenient to do so. Silence is complicity. Their inaction allowed the harassment to continue and escalate. I think about the system that made Patricia think she could get away with it. The centuries of Black people being driven out of neighborhoods, being relegated to certain areas, being treated as property values threats rather than neighbors. The history that told her this was acceptable, that using police as a weapon against Black people was a legitimate tactic. And I think about the future, about what kind of country we're building for Maya and kids like her. Will they grow up in a world where they're judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin? Or will they face the same battles we faced, the same battles our parents and grandparents faced? I don't know the answer, but I know we have to keep fighting. We have to keep calling out racism when we see it. We have to keep demanding accountability. We have to keep pushing for systemic change, not just individual consequences. Because what happened to me wasn't just about one racist neighbor. It was about a system that empowers people like Patricia Summers, a system that treats Black bodies as inherently suspicious, a system that allows racism to hide behind phrases like neighborhood safety and property values, a system that requires Black families to prove their right to exist in spaces white people consider their own. The body cam footage revealed something worse than one woman's racial animus. It revealed the machinery of systemic racism in action, the coordination, the planning, the casual cruelty of people who see nothing wrong with terrorizing a family because they want to keep their neighborhood a certain way. But here's what else the body cam footage revealed: that when racism is exposed, when it's dragged into the light and people are forced to actually look at it rather than pretending it doesn't exist, consequences can follow. Justice, however imperfect, can be achieved. Change, however incremental, can happen. Our story didn't end the way I wanted it to. We lost our house. We lost our sense of safety. We carry trauma that will take years to fully process. But we survived. We fought back. And maybe, just maybe, we made things a little bit better for the next family, for the next Black family that moves into a predominantly white neighborhood and just wants to be treated like neighbors instead of threats. That has to be enough, because it's all we have. This isn't just my story. This isn't just about what happened to me in my driveway that October afternoon. This is about every Black person who's had the police called on them for barbecuing in a park, for swimming in a community pool, for sleeping in a college common room, for entering their own apartment building. This is about the countless times racism presents itself as concern, as caution, as just looking out for the neighborhood. If this story opened your eyes, if it made you see the reality that Black families face every single day, then don't just watch and scroll past. Take action. Educate yourself about housing discrimination and racial profiling. Speak up when you see it happening in your community. Support organizations fighting for fair housing and police reform. Hold your local officials accountable for enforcing civil rights laws. Be the neighbor who intervenes, who offers support, who refuses to stay silent when injustice is happening. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we're going to keep telling these stories, keep exposing these injustices, keep demanding better. Share this video with everyone you know. Have uncomfortable conversations about racism with your friends and family. Because change doesn't happen when we stay comfortable. It happens when we're willing to confront hard truths and do the difficult work of making things better. The body cam revealed something worse than we imagined, but it also revealed that accountability is possible when we refuse to look away. Don't look away. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stand up when you see injustice. Your voice matters. Your action matters. Together, we can build the kind of communities where everyone truly belongs.